Welcome to the show where two people get into one car and talk about absolutely anything. My name is Freddie, but you may also know me as Tavares from Jalopnik. Joining me today is one of the best automotive journalists in the world, Mr. Robert Sorokanich. His friends call him Bob, by the way. On top of writing for Road and Track and Car and Driver, he was once interviewed by Al Roker while wearing loafers with no socks, so he's my kind of guy. I met up with Bob in Brooklyn where we drove around and talked about what exactly it takes to become an automotive journalist, starting absolutely from scratch. Brought to you by APiDA Online, this is Offtrack.
You know, my given name is Robert. I was Bobby until I was like 10 years old.
Right.
And then as a 10-year-old in 5th grade, I decided no more of this Bobby stuff. This is too immature. I want a grown-up name. And I picked Bob. And like 10 minutes later realized that Bob is a name for, you know, old grandfather and great uncle types and crazy Vietnam vets. So, you know, but by that time the die had been cast, and so I was stuck with it.
Well, my name is Freddie, so that's I'm pretty much in the same boat. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That is an old traditional name. Man, we have quite the intersection going.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts. Yeah, it is. I mean, Freddie is. It's not a very. Do you know a successful Freddie other than Mercury, which?
There's some baggage with that.
Yeah, there definitely is some baggage with that name. I mean, there's Freddy Krueger, which all my 2nd and 3rd grade class let me know that I shared the name with that character.
Yeah, and what a great role model.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, so Bob, how Rowan Atkinson would say, like,
Bob.
How did you start in the automotive, I'm not going to say the automotive industry because it's not the automotive industry, it's automotive journalism.
Right.
Because I get a lot of questions, and I'm sure you do too. I'm going to take a left over here.
Sure.
I get a lot of questions, as I'm sure you do, about how you start in just blogging or in print or in media in general. How did you start?
So there's a long and a short story. The medium-length story is I sort of just stumbled into it. I went to school for biochemistry, and after undergrad, I actually went to medical school for 2 years because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I thought I wanted to be a physician. After about 2 years of that, I realized that I didn't want to do clinical medicine all day, every day.
Why not?
What I came to realize is I wanted to do medicine because I thought that medicine would really satisfy like that problem-solving side of my brain. And that's what I love about cars. Like I love working on cars and solving a problem, diagnosing something, figuring out what's wrong, figuring out a way to fix it.
I'm glad you said that. I'm exactly the same way, yeah.
And I get such satisfaction out of that. And what I came to realize about medicine is a lot of medicine, you know, no matter what the specialty is, you end up seeing the same thing all day, every day. You know, so if you're a pediatrician, you do kids with coughs and colds and belly and, you know, stomach bugs. If you're, you know, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, you're doing hip replacements all day, every day.
Right.
And what I saw of medicine, there was a lot of that, you know, doing the same thing every day, and very little of that sort of creative problem solving that I was hoping for.
So why not become a plastic surgeon? No, I mean, people look different, right? They have different appearances, and they want to look specifically, you know, they want to augment their outward appearance in a way that it's different every single time. So why, you know, it's kind of like the West Coast customs of medicine, you know?
Except that, you know, it would be like saying everybody that brought a car to West Coast Customs wanted, you know, candy apple paint and 22-inch wheels. Like, when you're
But isn't that the case? Isn't that actually the case?
It is. When, you know, when I know of plastic surgeons who all they do is breast augmentation. And so all day, every day, they're just doing breast augmentation. And, you know, even something like that, where you've got, you know, a vastly different person on the table with every surgery, you're doing sort of the same thing. And that just sort of, I don't know, the reality of practicing medicine was a little less intellectually satisfying than I thought it was going to be. So I left medical school and I was working a bunch of different sort of odd jobs. And I was doing a little writing on the side just sort of for fun. And I was doing, I did a few freelance pieces for Popular Mechanics, automotive stuff. And I was just doing it as a way to make a few bucks while I was applying for quote unquote regular jobs.
Yeah.
And
the stuff you should be doing.
Right, yeah.
Not screwing around on the internet.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so at one point, it just sort of dawned on me that I liked the writing so much more than I liked any of these jobs that I was applying to.
Okay.
And so it was literally just the act of me waking up one morning and saying, all right, maybe I'll pursue writing instead of pursuing any of these other quote-unquote normal jobs I'm looking at.
Which is scary, isn't it?
It kind of is, but this was during the darkest days of the recession, when it was very hard to find jobs, and you were competing with people who already had experience in these fields. So I just sort of said, to hell with it, I want to write. And I had taken, I was not coming at it as a complete novice. I had taken a few journalism courses in undergrad. I went to Syracuse University.
Okay.
And so they've got, one of the best journalism schools in America. And while I didn't have a journalism degree from there, I had taken a few courses in news writing.
Okay.
And so, I knew how to do an interview. I knew
how to craft a story.
Right, yeah, I knew some of the ethics that go into journalism, and I was not completely green at it.
Okay.
So I started looking for writing jobs, and my first real writing job was actually an internship with Gizmodo. And I was 27 years old, and this was an internship that was designed for kids who had just come out of college, and it was a minimum wage job. But it got me in the door. It gave me a reason to move away from my parents' house in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
To come to New York. And once I got that opportunity, I really just worked my ass off. And I was probably the most annoying intern in the world, because the internship was, help out the writers. It was, you'd help out on research, find information about the things that the writers are reporting on. Nowhere in there was the idea that, hey, you could write stuff yourself.
Yeah.
But I was just, I worked hard at everything they gave me, and in addition, I would sort of stick my head up and say, I would love to write about this, A lot of what I first pitched was medical, because I had some background. And it was just a matter of being dogged and doing everything that they asked me to do well, but also saying, hey, I would love to write about something, And finally, they started letting me write. I wore them down to the point where they were like, all right, I guess we'll let him write this silly little thing. And
it can't hurt, right?
Right, yeah. And I just kept doing that, and so the internship turned into a staff writer job.
Okay.
And then I worked at Gizmodo for almost 2 years, and then Hearst approached me.
Okay.
Hearst Magazines, which operates both Road and Track and Car and Driver. And they had seen some of the stuff that I had done at Gizmodo, because while Gizmodo doesn't cover cars per se, I found ways to write about car stuff for a Gizmodo audience.
Yeah, and Gizmodo is, just for those of you who aren't really up on the Gawker media trends and websites.
The Gawker universe.
Yeah, the Gawkerverse. Gizmodo is mainly about like tech articles, stuff
Right.
like that. Yeah.
It's tech coverage, so it's mainly cell phones, laptops, apps, and then anything else that's cool and has a technology angle to it. So whenever I found a cool car story that had to do with tech or design, I would pitch it, and if it was something that a Gizmodo reader would be interested in, I could write about it. And so I carved out a very sort of narrow niche there where it wasn't just writing about, the Corvette has 455 horsepower. That was not a story I could do on Gizmodo. What I could do is, here's the design of the new Mustang, and here's what makes it different from previous Mustangs. Right. Or, what is the best idea for in-dash electronics? Like, why don't we have an iPad in our dashboards? So stuff like that. And I made sure that anything that I could write about for that audience, I did write about. And then Hearst approached me about becoming a news writer for roadandtrack.com and caranddriver.com.
So they just approached you and said, we've seen all, your body of work. Right. And we like what we see, so come work for us?
Yeah. And it was an opportunity out of the blue. They came to me, they saw what I had been doing and they liked it. And I couldn't say no because I've been reading Road and Track since I was 8 years old.
Okay.
And so, having a business card that said Road and Track, how do you say no to that?
Yeah.
So, it's hard for me to give advice because my story was basically, I decided to do it on a whim and opportunities kept presenting themselves.
But I don't think it's on a whim because if you went into a industry, any industry, and then you decided to give it your all, and that's something that you wanted to do, and it came naturally to you because it's a passion of yours that you never thought would actually make some money, but you're like, let's try for it. Let's see where it goes. And if you worked diligently towards a certain goal and then you got there, I don't think it's on a whim. On a whim is like, I went down the street and I found $100,000 on the in a bag. Yeah. That's a whim. But if you go, I worked really hard for a year. I did nothing but eat, sleep, and breathe. Automotive coverage. Right. And then out of the blue, I got that's it. There's a difference there.
Yeah, and the biggest opportunity that I got was just being given the ability to write. Yeah. And like I said, with Gizmodo, it started out with small stuff. They weren't going to give me big blockbuster assignments as an intern. But
of course.
I made sure that the small stuff was good, and being there taught me how to write for the internet. It taught me how to be fast. It taught me how to be accurate. It taught me how to write stuff that is intriguing to the reader. Without playing games.
It's like Gizmodo paid you to go to school for writing on the internet.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, that is the ideal of an internship, Yeah. You don't take an internship to make money. You take an internship to learn what they couldn't have taught you at school, and to maybe prove yourself to the point where you have the opportunity to stick your foot in the door. I mean, it worked out really nicely for me.
All right, that's it for today's episode. What did you think? As always, you can leave a comment down below to give us your view, and join us next time when we continue the conversation. Be sure to follow Bob on Twitter to keep up with his frankly amazing automotive writing, and subscribe to this channel by hitting the button right on top of me if you want to see more videos just like this. Thanks for watching.